Happy International Women's Day. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Jessica, and I'm a developer advocate for Google Assistant, and I'm based in Mountain View. And I've been with Google for about 3 years, actually. And this theme of this panel is Women Meeting the Moment. And we have two Googlers who will be joining me today for a discussion. And to us, meeting the moment means honoring the resiliency, accomplishments, and forward momentum of women in tech. In this unprecedented year, it's an opportunity to acknowledge a global pandemic, the long overdue reckoning with social and racial injustices, and its new ways of working and learning, and the shifting priorities personally and professionally. I'll be monitoring today's session, and I'll also be joining in the discussion. To start, I'd like to invite Alicia and Kamala to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm so happy to be here with you, and thank you for moderating this wonderful panel. I'm Kamala Subramaniam. I am an engineering manager in Google Global Networking. My team's based in both New York City and Sunnyvale. We work on real-time bandwidth enforcement and end-to-end pathing and utilization for all of Google's wide area networks. I've been at Google for about 5 years now, and it's been a wonderful journey. Apart from that, I'm a mother to two kids, a 13-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thanks, Jessica. Very happy to be on this panel with the both of you today. My name is Alicia Wright. I am an engineering manager based out of Los Angeles. I've been at Google for about 9 years. I work in the ads organization. I work on building tools for our internal global sales force. Outside of work, I'm a mother to a few children, and I enjoy hot yoga and surfing. Really glad to be here with the both of you today.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I feel like I am a proud pet parent. I have a nice little doggie that every once in a while in my videos she comes out in. So yeah. Well, thank you both of you for your introductions. It's an honor just to be here to chat with you too. And a reminder that, of course, today we're celebrating International Women's Day. And this year's theme is Meeting Your Moment Together, which is aimed to honoring the resiliency and accomplishments and the forward momentum of women in tech. So let's kick off the conversation by asking, what does it mean to celebrate International Women's Day to you as a woman and as a leader?
So I think it's 2021, yeah, and we still have a day that's dedicated to women. So I think it's dual parts, right? What this day means to me, it's part celebration because we've come a long way. Women can vote now. We can own credit cards. We can have a bank account. We can attend universities. We can breastfeed in public, but we still have a long way to go. Right, according to the World Economic Forum, to get gender equality here in the United States, it's going to take 208 years, right? And that's a long time. Women are about 27% of Congress right now, but we have 51% of women in the population, right? There are fewer women CEOs in the top Fortune 500 companies, fewer than the number of men who are named James, right? So I think, like I said, it's part celebration, but it's also part of a reminder that there's a lot of work ahead of us. And for all of those women who made it easier for us today, I think we are here to say that we have a long journey to make it easier for the generations to come.
Yeah, I think you said that very well. I look at it much the same. It's a day to celebrate just how far we've come, and just how far things have come in the nearly 20 years that I've been in tech. The social climate has changed quite a bit. We've made huge strides just in what's possible. So I think now, today, is a great day to really celebrate the accomplishments, the achievements of women that are in the spotlight, not just the women in the spotlight, but also the women that are every day working behind the scenes, working tirelessly to make all of these things possible. So I'm really, really glad that we're taking a moment to pause and reflect on just how far we've come, and also think about the exciting challenges ahead of us to, as Kamala was saying, make things better, make things a little easier for the next generation of women. coming up in tech.
Definitely. What you both said really resonated with me because it's definitely, I know I am the type of person where I can get complacent, like things become normal. And it's a good reminder to challenge the status quo that we're not done. And it's not just for the individual, it's for everybody. It's for our future, it's for men and women and non-binary folks. Just having more equality is good for everybody. So definitely love that. So let's pivot over to being a little bit more career focused. So what is the best advice that you've received? Actually, this is not to be career. Any good advice is always helpful. So what's a piece of good advice that you've had and how did it impact your journey?
That's a great question. Let's see. I've gotten a lot of really good advice over the years, but one piece of advice that really sticks out, it was from a former manager, and that advice was, don't let yourself get too comfortable. And this piece of advice was actually given to me right after promotion. And so it wasn't what I was expecting to hear, but it was really timely in that when you're considering your career roadmap and looking at where you want to go, you have to learn how to be comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable. Now, this isn't about being comfortable in toxic situations or hostility or anything of that nature. This is really more about being comfortable with growth and with a certain level of uncertainty. As you're rising to the next level, as your opportunities expand, it will be new. And there will be things that you've just frankly never done before. And so I actually found that piece of advice very helpful over the years. And anytime there's something new and I'm starting to get uncomfortable, really looking at that as the opportunity.
Oh my God, that's something I used to work in mental health before I transitioned to tech, and sitting in discomfort is something that I think about of this is growth and this is learning, and it's going to be a little uncomfortable, and that's part of growing. It's kind of like when you're growing physically, your bones kind of hurt and your muscles hurt, and there's like, it's uncomfortable, but later it starts feeling normal. So I really resonated with that.
Yes, wonderful advice. The best advice that I have received is to make lateral moves. And sometimes we are so focused and head down and just, focus on climbing the ladder vertically. So what happens is a change in a lateral move actually increases your spear in many different ways. Right? It could be a lateral change of a ladder. It could be a lateral change of a domain or an organization. And what that really enables you is you kind of start building skill sets, and you also kind of move out of complacency and being comfortable, right? If you work in a domain for too long, that thing really comes very easy to you. But because what's really required at the very top is a whole large of skill sets, a whole set of skill sets, which could remain from like having the know-how of different infrastructures, for example, right? Like how do you apply the same principles to whether it's search infrastructure or networking infrastructure, right? It could be leadership skills as you go around, like how do you build and lead large teams? How do you hire for them? And how do you set the mission and the strategies? So I think this has been one of the very best advices that I've received, just having a cumulative set of skill sets so that if and when you make it to the top, you're actually better prepared.
I love that. That's fantastic. Especially, it's not like career paths are not necessarily linear like they used to be 50 years ago. Paths are windy and they're just twisty and curvy, and you don't lose anything, really. You don't go back to square one ever because you have all of this knowledge. That's fantastic. A piece of advice that I got early on when I was transitioning to my career into tech was I was chatting with somebody, and I was talking about interviews and how I didn't feel as though I had all the qualifications. And of course, there are statistics that show that women are way less likely to apply to a job if they don't meet X number of qualifications. And I don't remember the statistic off my head, but it's significantly different than if a traditional man was applied. If he doesn't have everything, he will apply, women won't. And so I was talking to this gentleman, And he framed it differently for me because it was his own story. And he was sharing how he was doing an internship with a company, and they offered him a job to work there. And it was only like a 2-week internship. It wasn't long enough to really build that much rapport. And it was just this one-off thing. And the person who was offering him the job was like, it's not your job to figure out if you have the qualifications. It's the employer's job is to figure out, do you have the skill sets that I need? And that's what they're tasked with. And just framing it that way, it took it away from me having to like see and validate whether I fit within them, to like, oh no, I could present, these are my goodies. This is my skills. Are you interested? And let's have a dialogue there. So that was, I don't know why, for me, just really resonated, of not having to limit myself or filter out or assume what other people might be looking for, because I don't know what they need. And most of the time, people need a variety of skills. So a lot of my mental health and working with people skills and being able to manage programs worked really well in tech because I know how to time manage myself. So that was my piece of advice that really, really helped me.
That's wonderful. Stats actually show that if there are 10 job requirements, women look to see if they fulfill 9 or 10 of them. And the same thing goes for promo as well, right?
Ooh.
So I think we should be a little bit more mindful that there are other things other than just what's written on the job requirements that's required for skills. And women bring a lot of that into the marketplace. Empathy, compassion.
Totally. Oh my, thank you so much for like having those stats ready. Like that's amazing. I love it when people have those things. Because I'm definitely the opposite, where I'm more of that feeling type of person. So I remember how things make me feel or how things can impact, but not always a data point. So thank you. So I'm going to move over to my next question is, where do you feel like you've created the most impact at Google and outside of work?
So at Google, actually, it's been a phenomenal ride here. I have a career that's always spanned networking. So I got a master's and my PhD in networking, and I've worked in several different domains in the networking area. So having worked in networking for a hyperscaler brings you so many perspectives, right? It kind of shapes you in the 3 pillars of any infrastructure that's possible, whether it is scalability, efficiency, or reliability. I think one of my proudest moments is a project called NetSLO, which is basically a way to measure end-to-end SLOs for our networks, and what is the availability of our networks in terms of packet loss, latency, and bandwidth utilizations, to measure it meaningfully in a way to our users. So we were actually targeting happy SLOs, right? So it's not just a active metrics of what's going on in your network, but has the customer felt any pain. So it was a good measurement of our customers or applications and services that ride on top of our networks to actually use them to define their own SLAs. And with the advent of cloud now, and all the customers and their services riding our network, I think it's becoming more and more useful. And I'm really proud of it because I see the name coming up like almost in every tech review and every PRD, and you can see that you've kind of made a system that's modular, that's extensible, that so many applications can use it with simple design interfaces and simple APIs. Outside of Google, I think one of the things that I build within Google is I'm the founder for WINS, which is the Women in Networking Summit, which aims to have it. We have our own, gender-based hiring. We're trying to hire more women into networking, and we have career fairs every year that's targeted only for women, and we've had amazing success with the pipeline that we have, and we have more women in networking because of that. So that's an external career fair. But WINS also takes care of women already within the pipeline, because one part is hiring, the second part is retention, right? And how do you grow women? How do you promote them? How do you make them the leaders for tomorrow? So this is something that it just started off as a side project in Google, 4 years ago, and it's become a passion. And I think it's super important to have something else other than work that you actually bring to work. So that's my story.
That is so impactful. It's moments like this that just remind me of what makes Google such a special place to work. We have women and leaders like Kamala that have foundational impact, not just on the technologies that she and her team are developing at Google, but also in the organizations that she's growing outside of Google. It's just really inspiring to hear. Thank you for sharing. As for moments of impact and projects that I've worked on, the projects I've worked on have been at the application layer. So I work on tools that our salespeople use. And so the impact here can be more closely tied to the impact on an individual's daily productivity, their performance, their happiness. The things that give me the most professional joy in what I do are really knowing that efforts that we've made, it might sound silly, but they've saved sellers hours of time. We work on tools that pull massive amounts of data out of Google's infrastructure and organize them in a way so that sellers can get insights in minutes. And this saves sellers hours of time and enables us to have conversations with our clients about how Google is serving the needs of their business. And so the impact that I work on, the impact that my teams deliver is really more around delivering moments of user happiness and really around empowering not just the success of our internal businesses, but the success of those that rely on Google services and products.
Totally. It definitely reminds me of those things that like you take for granted and people don't realize it until something's broken. But like it's that saving time and making it seamless like that. That's really impactful to make it easier for everybody.
That's a really good point. Users notice when it's broken. And so if users aren't noticing your impact, that can be a really good sign.
Right. I think for me, something that I'm really proud of when it comes to impact has to do with when I first transitioned into tech. I used to do a lot of education. And so I was really passionate on teaching other women and folks how to get into tech and kind of normalizing that and kind of sharing the knowledge that I've learned, because that's usually how I learn things really well, is by teaching it. And so I worked a lot with several nonprofits on teaching folks, doing workshops and doing weekends and evening classes and really getting to know the community, which was amazing because I was really fortunate where I got to really learn and know people when they're starting off. And now I get to see my LinkedIn. And I'm like, oh, so-and-so is working there and they're working at that company. And like a lot of my network, when it comes to women, like to people in tech, is mainly women because I heavily invested so much into that. So I feel really lucky that I kind of have a little bit different experience because of that. So that I think has been really, really I'm very proud of that type of impact, even if it was just, I unblock somebody to really just to understand what conditionals are and how that works. Like these really kind of simple concepts can be the hardest one. Like, how do you explain to somebody what a string is? It's really hard if you're not in that space. So that I think is one of the things I'm really proud of. Though it's small, I find it so impactful to be that little part of someone's journey. Fantastic. So I have another question. So what's been the biggest learning or growing experience at Google so far for you? Or something that you wish you knew starting out at Google?
Let's see. So something I wish I knew when I was starting out. It does apply to Google, but it applies more to earlier stages in my career. I wish I had known earlier that the learning curve does flatten. That in your early years in tech, you're coming up to speed on decades of history of the industry. There is just a wealth of knowledge that you have to gain quickly. And it can really feel like you're drinking from the fire hose and like you just maybe don't belong because you don't know, or you think everyone else knows something that you don't. And I wish I would have known earlier that the learning curve really does flatten and you really do get to the other side where the learning becomes incremental, where you now have the background knowledge, you now have that experience. And you also then get into the position where you are creating the next steps, you're creating the innovation in industry. And that's really where the magic starts to begin. And I didn't have that roadmap starting out. I didn't have that North Star. And so I just was sort of walking along blindly, hoping that it got better. And it did. It got so much better and so much more rewarding. And so that's one thing that I wish I knew starting out, that it not only gets easier, it gets incredibly enjoyable and satisfying.
I think for me, the learning experience is very similar to what Alicia said, right? It's in the sense that what you need as you grow within Google. Google can be very intimidating to outsiders, right? To people who are applying, who are interviewing. They're like, no Nobel on my resume. I don't think I'm going to make through this interview, right? So the truth of the matter is that, as you climb the ladder and as you grow up, right, the skill sets you've already developed, like Alicia said, right? But a lot of it starts changing into how you're able to influence people, right? And what are your user interface, right? How well you work with people. How do you get people to believe in your idea that now you're in the incremental position of actually innovating? And how do you get people to rally around that and actually take it to completion or to production, right? So those skill sets are something that we need to pay attention to, like especially as we mature in our career, right? Because those become super important because there is probably nothing in Google that we do as a singleton. It always involves teams. So how do you work with teams? How do you work with people who are coming from very different, diverse backgrounds, very diverse processes and diverse ways of thinking? And you want to align all of them into a single objective, right? So I think that was one of my biggest learning experiences, that you need to be, good and technical in whatever you're doing. But after a certain amount, it's really your ability to work with people and understand the users that is really going to be beneficial.
Yeah, those are two fantastic answers. A lot of it is like going through the experience and learning and being able to capitalize on these other skills, which is great. I think for me, it was and I'm still going through this because I've been at Google for 3 years. It's just like throwing something on a doc and sharing that out and starting like rolling that process. Because I used to work in very small companies before, where I think the largest company I worked at was 30 people. So it was so much easier before to get people onboarded because I knew everybody. And like being in a place where you don't know everybody and you can't, nor is it expected for you to cover every base, but to like build and kind of throw an idea out and have others support and go, oh, but what about this thing? Okay, well, let's kind of work through this and see it as a bigger thing than just, this is my baby and I'm doing it and I'm going to do it on my own after I got buy-in. So it's almost doing the same work, but in a different way. And I doubt I explained that very well, but for those who are like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. And for those that it did make sense, I'm so sorry.
Almost all Googlers would get that.
Fantastic. So I am so inspired by both of you. And it's really nice to know that when I grow up, it'll get easier and that things will be at least not as overwhelming. And that's really nice and comforting to know. And I definitely feel very lucky to be able to work with you both and to work somewhere where I have the opportunity to connect with you two, because I doubt our paths would have crossed otherwise. So thank you so much. And before I close this out, would you like to share any closing remarks for the women and allies turning into this talk today?
I think that there's work to be done from both sides, right? The women who are trying to make this better for us and for generations to come, as well as the allies, right? So historically, if you look at it, it's always been kind of fix the woman, and now we're moving towards fix the system. So there's this wonderful book I read which kind of categorizes the issues that we face into patterns, right? And the first one is kind of prove it again, which is basically women need to prove themselves much more, right? To get, sometimes maybe half as less. And I think that, we are fortunate that in Google we have a system set up, but the rest of the world, it's still not there. And that's why allies and women can be super helpful, where you actually make the system very metrics driven and very, system focused on that, so that it's very objective and not subjective, right? So either everybody is rated on potential or everybody's rated on performance. It can't be one or the other, right? There's also something called the tightrope bias, where but if you're coming across as too masculine, you're probably too aggressive, or if you're coming across as too feminine, you may not be much of a leader. So when you say you're aggressive, people say that you're respected but not liked, or if you're masculine, but if you're feminine, you're liked but not respected. But in truth of the matter is, to get ahead, you need to be both respected and liked, right? So how do you navigate that, and how do you give people on either side of the spectrum the benefit of the doubt? Again, based on purely what the skill sets are, right? I think, and I hope that we've gone past the maternal wall bias, which is basically the way you come across if you're a woman, or if you just recently got married, or you plan to get married, whether or not you even intend to have kids, right? Resumes are subject to some kind of bias. I'm hoping we've crossed that barrier, but again, it's we know we've seen a lot of working women here today, and we know that, and mothers, right? Working mothers who are probably far more competent, than they were when they were likely single or something. So give them the benefit of that doubt as well. And finally, I think the one takeaway for all of us women is basically, we have this thing where, the more experienced women kind of say, "Oh, it was tough for us," so we kind of subject the younger, inexperienced women to something like that. But we need to kind of give ourselves that space, right? Because the experienced ones are probably still fighting their own battles, right? And the experienced ones need to know that we've kind of worked to make it easier for the younger ones in the show, so they should enjoy it, and then they should pick the next set of issues to work on. So I think that forming that posse of women around you is super important. It works very well in Google. When you have strong women come together, you actually pick each other up. So I would say certainly invest in that a lot.
There were so many great points, and much more than just nuggets of wisdom in what you just said. I think we've really only just been able to scratch the surface on so many important topics to women in tech, growing your career, building your network. We barely scratched the surface and just alluded to the challenges of growing your family, balancing the demands from outside with the demands of your daily job. I'm really glad, I'm really honored to work at a company that actually spends so much time internally thinking about these issues and discussing them, and that the leaders that I'm around are so thoughtful about addressing these. So for any closing words of advice to women watching this and allies, I would say take all challenges as opportunity and in stride, and look for ways that we can support each other and uplift each other. Many of us came to Google for these challenges. not interpersonal challenges, for the professional challenges. And so we have the personality types that really allow us to support each other in this growth. And so that's, I guess, my final words here. That to look for ways to help each other in our career growth.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Alicia and Kamala, for sharing your time, your experience, and your knowledge with us. Really appreciate it. And for the audience, I hope you all found this discussion to be really helpful and insightful and as inspiring to you as it was for me. Again, I want to thank our two guests for sharing their experiences and their points of view. And thank you for celebrating International Women's Day with us.
Thank you very much, Jessica and Alicia. Wonderful to be here.